Hey, what's up, guys? This is episode 4 of KCFY Unscripted podcast. We're going to be talking about church hurt, and I'm here with
Tracy from the Glow Morning Show.
And it's Greg from the Midday Cafe.
And this is Genesis at the Light of Night. So we're going to be talking about it. It is a hard topic to talk about, and we could all relate.
But Greg covered it in his show this
Yeah,
week.
we actually talked about church hurt on the Midday Cafe. And so, yeah, we brushed the subject a little bit.
I listened. I did listen.
Did you listen?
I
Okay.
did.
All
And
right.
some tips, I was like,
you were taking,
gotta write it
notes.
down.
here's the thing. We all have experienced it.
Yes.
So I feel like the best thing to do is talk about what we've learned and how we've grown from those experiences. And so what do you think, well, first, what do you think one of the best tips that you gave probably might have resonated with people most?
What stood out?
I think, your feelings are valid. You have, it's validating those feelings. And so instead of just brushing it under the rug and acting like, well, this didn't really happen, or, or maybe it's acknowledge your feelings. It's okay, I think, to do that because that's part of the healing process
Yeah.
is acknowledging what the hurt is and go ahead and feel it. It is what it is. It's real. It's legit. And then that way you've gotten it out on the table in a sense, as opposed to kind of trying to, hide it away.
Yeah.
And that's part of the healing process. And that, the takeaway from this week when I covered it on the show was that, the whole point is to get from the hurt to restoration and getting back to being involved, in church. And so that was the big point, was not to beat up on churches and not to say that you shouldn't go to church, but was to, work through the hurt and restore and get back. And it may not be at the same place. It might be, it might not be. And that's okay.
Yeah. And the sad part is that a lot of times when people experience church hurt, they don't go back to church.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, that's. I'm never going back there again. I'm never going to church. That's it. I'm done. I'm just gonna watch it on TV.
And that's
You
true.
know?
Like how you mentioned right now about there's that point A where it's the church hurt, and it's point B is having that restoration. And people get lost in that road to get to restoration. They stop at church hurt, they feel everything all at once, and they're like, all right, that's it. I'm not
done.
going back in there anymore. I'm not going to any churches, period.
Right. And I think if we look biblically, that's not God's model for us. We're not to forsake getting together with other believers. There's a reason that we go to church and we're part of a fellowship. So again, that first off, we're not saying don't go to church here. All right?
No,
And
go to
church.
Go to church.
I said that on the Midday Cafe too. But going through that process, I think sometimes it takes some time. You're not going to be back where you were or back in that same place where everything's okay without going through experiencing the hurt, dealing with those feelings, getting some help, getting some counseling maybe if that's necessary, and that's certainly an absolutely valid thing. And then eventually getting back to that place of being restored somewhere.
And now, did you talk about forgiveness?
I don't know that we necessarily covered that, but I think that's a good point. That with any hurt we feel, whether it's something that I do to you or you do to me, we still need to experience forgiveness. We need to forgive. We need to be able to move on. Again, that's part of the healing process.
Yeah.
Otherwise, that unforgiveness then is just poison that you're eating and drinking every day.
Yes.
It's souring you. It's not doing anything to the other side.
Yes.
They may not even be aware that they
Yeah.
hurt you.
Yes.
So
I actually talked about forgiveness on the show. And I mentioned there that unforgiveness, a lot of people hold that bitterness and that anger because they think it's harming the other person. But in reality, that other person, for all we know, they're enjoying, they're doing their routine, their day-to-day things. Yeah. And you think holding that unforgiveness is hurting them. But in reality, it's hurting you because you're holding to that bitterness. You're hurting that. You're feeling all the hurt. And it's like, for example, if let's say that you have an open wound, right, because of that church hurt and everything, and it's like if you're grabbing your finger and putting it back on that wound, you're feeling it again. They're just constantly reminding that in yourself, and that's what unforgiveness really is. It's not hurting the other person, it's hurting you.
Yeah.
No,
and you don't want to stay stuck in that because it's a stronghold, and it like one time somebody said it's like a cancer. The
Yeah.
more you, the more it grows, the more harmful it becomes to you and to everybody around you. And so I think definitely forgiveness is something we have to walk through, something we have to work through with church hurt. Forgiveness doesn't mean exposing yourself to the person or situation that hurt you. It means giving it back to God, and it means walking in forgiveness. Don't expect an I'm sorry. You don't have to, because a lot of times we want them to be held accountable for their actions, for what they did, not expecting an I'm sorry. Just giving it back to God and saying, okay, Lord, well, one day they will have to stand before you accountable for their actions and what they did. And vice versa. We'll have to stand before God. If we do not forgive, we'll have to stand before God and answer for that.
And that's the reason why people don't want to forgive, because they think, oh, if I forgive this person, it makes it seem like what they did to me was right. And that's not the case. That's not what forgiveness is about. That's what forgiveness is not. Forgiveness is for yourself, for your heart's condition, and for the condition of your heart. And you don't realize that when you hold that bitterness and that anger and that resentment, you're actually building like that barrier with your relationship with the Lord. Because while you're walking with the Lord, growing in your spiritual maturity, that unforgiveness could be a roadblock to what the Lord wants to take you in. But you need to deal with that first. You got to combat with that bitterness and that anger and that hatred, resentment first.
Absolutely. And again, I mentioned that, there is no perfect church.
Yeah,
there isn't. Okay.
We're imperfect people.
If there is one, the second you go there, it's not perfect anymore. All right. So, again, we are all broken people. We all have our issues and things that we deal with, and we fall short. And so when the church is full of those people, just like you and me, right? Guess what? Church hurt's inevitable. It's going to happen, and so we need to be able to move past it. We need to be able to heal from it and not let it, keep us from fellowship with other believers.
We definitely need to learn from it and grow from it. And I feel like if you've ever experienced church hurt, recall what that felt like. Recall what, that experience was for you, and you make sure you don't repeat that for somebody else. And so I've talked to some friends, and that's kind of like the thought process is I don't ever want anybody to feel the way I felt when I went through church hurt. So I don't ever want to repeat that or do that to anybody else. And the more we start to break that cycle, the more people are going to receive and want to be involved in church. Because when they experience the church hurt, like we said, sometimes they'll turn away and they'll be done. They'll wash their hands of it and not want to return to church. We have to provide a safe, loving environment and be honest. We're all broken people. We all fall short of, of perfection. Our perfection's found in Christ alone. And so we have to remember that.
Yeah, there's grace for that. There's grace for that for sure. I remember when I went through my church hurt the first time, it really came as a lesson, because there is lessons to church hurt. There is lessons. And, in all actuality, the Lord showed me that I was putting my eyes on man. And because the church hurt came because we had, a certain someone that fell and, fell into sins, fell into temptation, and took a couple people, with them. And that hurt me. I was like, what are we doing here? It doesn't seem like we're the church of Jesus Christ. Like what's going on? And that made me veer away from church. And so I never went back. And the Lord showed me, hey, okay, you departed from the church, but why did you depart from me? I didn't hurt you. And I realized that this whole time I had this certain someone on the pedestal where the Lord was supposed to be sitting in the throne of my heart, but I had someone else sitting there. Yes. So I was looking at man, not at God. People are who hurt people. God doesn't hurt people. He brings restoration. He brings, renewed, a transformative heart. I mean, God is love, and there's grace for that. So like I said, church hurt does come with lessons. I mean, tell the Lord, it's not saying that what the person did was right, but Lord, teach me what can I learn from this? What is it that you're trying to tell me? And I remember the Lord told me that, hey, you put your eyes on man, not on me.
That's right. That's the whole concept of beauty from ashes, So whatever the brokenness or the mess is, God can take that and use that and do something miraculous, really, with it. And you can be a whole new person on the other side of that. So, don't be afraid to embrace it, deal with it, work through it, and then get restored.
Yeah. And so what recommendation would you give? Because I feel like communication is very key when it comes to church hurt. I feel like a lot of times, some people just feel like they're hurt and then they don't communicate, their feelings or they just walk away. What recommendation would you give to somebody who is newly experiencing this about communicating their feelings, or it might even be a miscommunication that caused it?
Yeah, I think if it's at all possible, I think biblically we should try to confront in a biblical, in an honest, and a humble way, the situation, and try to deal with it and see if it can't be resolved, or like you said, find out that maybe it is a miscommunication and okay, this wasn't what I thought it was. And if it doesn't go to that point, or there's just a stubbornness on the other side that is not willing to work through the situation with you, then I think that's where it's time to depart. It's time to move on and go somewhere else. Just don't unplug and not get plugged back in.
Yeah, that's good. My advice would definitely be, I know what helped me out was sticking with community. Now, there's much more than community just in the church that you're in. There's other fellow believers in Christ, and that's what really helped me out. Seeking godly counsel by, other people, most importantly God, right? Most importantly, but seeking godly counsel. And, people that will mentor you, disciple you, show you, this is what's correct, this is what's not, going to the Bible and seeing, where is this in the Bible? Where is my situation in the Bible? And I'm telling you, you'll find all the answers there. But that's what helped me, making sure that I'm with community. Now, will there be a time when it comes to church that you'll want to be alone? Yeah, and that's okay. That's okay, because you got to be able to feel it, don't numb it out, feel all the hurt that you're feeling and take it back to God. But don't get stuck there. That's one thing. Don't be in solitude for too long, because then that's when it's going to really get you. But make sure that you try to stick with community, friends that love Christ, friends that love you. So that's what I would suggest.
Yes, definitely. I think that is great advice.
Excellent advice.
Definitely. And so that is our wrap up for this episode of Church Hurt.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for tuning in, guys. Remember, leave a comment, like, subscribe, tell us what you want to see. And also, we're on Spotify, so you could also listen to it. If you can't watch the video, then you could just listen to us on the go. Thank you guys for tuning in.
Bye.
Bye.
See ya.